Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hello there, it's Ngachacha, aka Matt, aka the squirrel that runs the RPD. That's right, the Raccoon City Police Department. And today we're going to be talking about that Resident Evil game that everyone cannot stop talking about. That's right, it is Resident Evil 5 from 2009. But before we get into it, if you want to know a little bit about me, I'm a co host from a video game podcast from Brothers from Another Mothership, where we do a monthly show about a video game and different topics. But we also do these things called classified files. They're like spin off episodes where we usually link up with community members and other content creators, or it's just us talking about different offshoot topics, again, still about video games. So we have a lot of fun there. So if you want to check us out, you can find us on Blue Sky, Instagram, our Discord, and on YouTube as Mothership Bros, and especially on YouTube where we're having lots of fun with different shorts and long form videos. All right, enough about me. Let's talk about Resident Evil 5. And I want to start off first by acknowledging the fact that it is a fantastic game. It really is an excellent game. But as a hardcore OG Resident Evil fan for almost 30 years, is it a good Resident Evil game? I still say yes, but there might be some really, really OG hardcore Resident Evil fans that might have the pitchforks up already with me saying that. And but just hear me out. Let just give me a chance to explain myself. So, being a fan of this series for almost 30 years, and yes, I can say that Resident Evil is definitely my favorite video game franchise of all time. I personally appreciate both styles of Resident Evil games. There's one style where it's old school survival horror, slow paced, deliberately clunky, atmospheric. You really need to manage your inventory and resources to the point where you cannot be shooting and killing everything, because otherwise, if you do, there's no way you're rolling credits. That's one style of Resident Evil games, and I would describe, especially the older games like Resident Evil 1 Remake, Resident Evil 2, the OG, and the remake itself, and even Resident Evil Biohazard. And yes, if you didn't check out Resident Evil Requiem or haven't heard anything about it, the Grace Ashcroft parts of that game definitely are survival horror at its finest. But I also really like the other style of Resident Evil games, which is more action oriented with like a horror aesthetic, but they're not scary games. They're stressful, they're tense. They still feel like Resident Evil, but they're not survival horror. But they're still fun and by their own means, and I quite enjoy them. And I'm thinking about the OG Resident Evil 4, the remake for Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil Village. And yes, again, if you played Resident Evil Requiem, the Leon parts are definitely more action oriented, but still stressful, still fun. And yes, Resident Evil 5 definitely falls more into this action oriented camp. And I remember very distinctively when it came out in 2009 that number one, I was beyond hyped for it. But I wasn't the only one. Everybody was just foaming at the mouths, no pun intended, after Resident Evil 4 came out and just changed the game. And from what I remember, like it was well received from fans and from critics, and I think it was one of the top selling and fastest selling Resident Evil games at that time. However, there was inklings, especially on the internet, especially from hardcore Resident Evil fans that were saying like, "Hey, we're kind of veering off here a little bit, a little too much in the action oriented parts, especially with like some of the on rail parts, and just like shooting things with unlimited ammo. So we'll get more into that later. But this was the beginning of Capcom trying to figure out, like, which way are we going with this franchise, with this IP? Are we going to go back to survival horror, or do we want to lean harder into this action-oriented game, or do we do a mix of both? And listen, if you're very curious, you can do some research on Resident Evil 6. I don't recommend playing it. Okay, and this is from somebody who loves this series, and even I can say like, yeah, you can skip on Resident Evil 6, like even if you're a hardcore fan, like you don't need to play it. It's fine. It's really not a fun time, and that's even with co-op. Like maybe it's mid at best. But anyways, Resident Evil 5 though is beyond mid. It is fantastic. It is an excellent game, and like I said, in my opinion, it still has that Resident Evil DNA. Is it scary? No, but if you're looking for an action shooter, especially if you have someone to play with, you found the right game because Resident Evil 5 is phenomenal in this co-op aspect, the action pieces, the set pieces. As most Resident Evil games, the story goes a bit wild, but that's okay. I think if you're looking for a serious story, Resident Evil might not be the franchise and IP that you're looking for. I mean, some parts are serious, some parts are cool, and don't get me wrong, like some parts are pretty emotional for me. But generally, like if you're looking at the lore and like does it make sense and how things tie together, um, what I can say is sometimes it doesn't, and you'll just have to do your best to suspend your disbelief and just enjoy the ride. So for the most part, Resident Evil 5 is a good story, gets a little bit wacky, but I think it's in line with what you should expect from a mainline Resident Evil game. So yeah, it still reminds me of Resident Evil 4, especially the OG, where again, it's not scary. It's not like you're slow. Like you move around very quickly. Like you're running, you're doing quick turns. And listen, if you've played Resident Evil 4, the OG, you got some pretty badass melee moves that you can do. You get to punch, you get to kick, you get to combo. So it does follow Resident Evil 4 in that aspect where you can you shoot enemies, you can follow up with some sweet melee attacks. You got an arsenal of weapons, pistols, shotguns, sniper rifles, rocket launchers, grenade launchers, knives, whatever you're thinking of, you have at your disposal, and it is so much fun. Flash grenades, incendiary grenades, magnum revolvers, like it's very satisfying, and I don't blame Capcom for going in this direction because I mean I think it would have been easy just to say like, hey, Resident Evil 4 did well, let's just do the exact same thing, different character, new story, people would be satisfied, and quite frankly, I would have been satisfied, and I think most of us would have been pretty happy with it. But I think Capcom was trying to take it to that next level and evolve what that gameplay looked like. And this is 2009, right? Online play was on the rise, and it was a feature that a lot of people wanted. So you can't really blame them, in my opinion, for experimenting and trying this. Where they added a partner in Resident Evil. Not the first time. If you played Resident Evil Zero, you can see that Capcom was kind of dabbling into this, but perhaps didn't have um, the technology or the means of how to do it. Because yes, there's partners in Resident Evil Zero, but you can't play with an actual friend like online or in person. Like you basically it's AI controlled, and then you can switch and take control of them. It's fun. They did make a pretty interesting use of it in Resident Evil Zero, and Resident Evil 5 again is kind of an evolution of that system alongside the Resident Evil 4 mechanics, where yes, you have an AI partner. I'll be quite upfront. The AI partner is horrendous. You can you can tell it what to do in some sense in terms of like staying back or being more aggressive, but still, back then like the AI wasn't the best. So if listen, obviously your partner wants to save you, right? So it's great if you give them healing items, they'll heal you. But sometimes you'll get like shot like twice and like you've lost like maybe 30%, and they'll waste like a first aid spray on you, like, here you go, partner. And it's like, good God, you've just wasted a first aid can. Like, you can wait till I'm in the red. Or if you're switching them to aggro, sometimes they'll just whip out the magnum and start just plowing over like basic enemies. It's like, hey man, like every Resident Evil fan knows this. You save the magnum for the boss, not for the enemy fodder. So the AI is not the best. Still a fun time by yourself. I wouldn't say it's the best way to play, but you'll still have a decent time. But in all seriousness, it is the best way to play is with somebody, 100%. Whether you do know that person or if you find somebody on the internet that likes Resident Evil games, play with them. It is way more fun. Obviously, if you set up voice chat, through Discord or whatever you want to use, so much fun. Like, listen, I've lost count of how many times I've played Resident Evil 5. And fun story, Resident Evil 5 was my first platinum trophy. And the most beautiful thing about this is I didn't even know I platinumed it. I didn't even know because I wasn't into trophy hunting back then, but I just played it so much and just did every single thing that was available that I planned and didn't realize it until I got into trophy hunting, and I looked back. I was like, oh hey, didn't know I popped this in the PS3. So yes, I played it a lot back then, and I would say this is a fortunate thing. There is no auto pop for the PS4 version of Resident Evil 5, so you don't get no free platinum. And I was like, you know what? I like this game. I really enjoyed it for what it is, and I don't mind going back for it. best friend that I platinumed it on the PS3, he too did not platinum it on his PS4. So we're like, hey, let's just link up and do it again. So I am doing another run, and I think it still holds up. It is so much fun when you're in sync with each other. You're healing each other when you need to. You're setting up combos for each other. You're splitting up. You're dividing the ammo. You're distracting bosses for one another. Like it is such a fantastic and very rewarding co-op experience. It really, really does utilize that in effective way, in my opinion, just because again, you can share inventory, you can give each other certain weapons, and again, like you can be there for each other to set up combos, to heal each other. And again, certain parts of the game force you to be separated, so then you might have to cover each other with sniper rifles from up top, from the bottom. So it's not just that it wasn't shoehorned in. It's clear that the from the beginning they knew they wanted a co-op game, and they would embed this aspect of the game into Resident Evil 5 in a very meaningful way. Like it's such an organic way. And you can kind of tell, as I was talking about before, like when you play by yourself, yes, there's AI, but you can feel like it's something missing. Like this isn't the way, the way the game was meant to be experienced, just the way, people who play Souls games will say, hey, there's only one mode. This is how it's meant to play. I would argue that Resident Evil 5 is meant to be played with a partner. It's fantastic. And if you're a longtime fan of the series, and I'm talking like from the OG Resident Evil 1, um, Resident Evil 5 didn't have to do this, but they made an effort to kind of pay homage and like a love letter to people, to fans of the series who've been there for such a long time. Because again, this game came out in 2009, and I think Resident Evil 1 came out in 1996. It's been a long time, but they made efforts to do tie-ins into the Resident Evil lore in terms of like, who are the first villains, who created, the T virus and the G virus, and kind of bringing all those elements of and aspects of that story into this one. So if you're a fan of Chris, Wesker, and Jill, they're all in this game. Spoiler alert for a game from 2009, but they're all in this game, and they're not just shoehorned in for Easter eggs or for cameos. Like they are meaningful and integral parts of the story. And again, bringing back to the lore in terms of the beginnings of Chris and Jill and Wesker, and just where it leads up to in Resident Evil 5, the story payoff is fantastic. Again, some parts a little bombastic, some parts are pretty wild, but if you suspend your disbelief and just kind of enjoy the story for what it's telling you, especially if you're a fan. There's a great payoff for it. I think you'll really, really get a lot of it in that sense. And listen, if you're going to be playing Resident Evil 5, you obviously should just go for the Gold Edition. Comes with all this DLC, which again, I have to say is fantastic. There's a lot in this DLC. Um, there's costumes, there's the mercenaries modes, and my personal favorite, there's two story DLCs. And again, I thought they were great. I thought they really, really enriched and enhanced the main story. Again, doesn't. I mean, you can still just do the main game without doing DLC. But listen, like I said, Gold Edition is there. You might as well do it. Desperate Escape is Jill with another partner. Again, kind of shows you her story in terms of like what she's doing, kind of that timeline. And again, more of that action oriented gameplay style. But again, fantastic in terms of story development and just level design. It's really fun. But my favorite DLC from Resident Evil 5 definitely has to be a Lost in Nightmares with Chris and Jill. Again, a bit of a spoiler for this game. You get to go back to the Spencer Mansion. That's right. You're going back to the mansion from Resident Evil 1. And I remember playing it for the first time and just seeing the Spencer Mansion in these graphics and in this style. It just blew me away. Just absolutely, just absolutely mind blowing. Like, yes, I did play Resident Evil 1 remake on the GameCube, and yes, seeing the Spencer Mansion that time. With those as stunning graphics already blew my mind. But the difference is, Resident Evil 1 remake, it's still fixed camera angles. Whereas Resident Evil 5, they're letting you free roam with the third person camera. So it was just incredible just to revisit the mansion in that way. And they made an effort to make it slower paced and to make it more survival horror. It's still not that spooky, but you can see what they're trying to do by making you revisit a set like this and to kind of bring back that environment and that aesthetics in terms of gameplay style. So I thought it was fantastic. So again, you're getting a great package. It's super cheap. Like I can't remember how much it is now. It must be like $8 in Canada when it's on sale. So Definitely worth it for the base game and all the DLC that you get. And yeah, I remember at that time there was an online mode, not just to play with a friend, but versus. That's right. You and a partner could do 2v2 with two other people. Pretty fun. You can get into some pretty fun and wild situations. So again, if you're really into the combat, and again, you have someone to play with, I definitely would recommend the versus mode to check out. Don't know if the servers are still up. It's a good question. I haven't I haven't tried it in a while, but I remember at least back then, it was a lot of fun. Um, I also want to talk about the fact that Resident Evil 5 did a pretty good job at introducing new protagonists. And again, as somebody who's been a fan for the series for such a long time, that's really not an easy feat. You know, it'd be so easy for Capcom to be like, okay, you guys like Leon, let's use him 10 times. You guys like Claire, let's use her, 20 times. Let's use Jill, let's use Chris, and just repeat, the same main protagonist over and over and over again. And I love the fact that Capcom said no. Um, we want to introduce new characters and different stories, and you can see that with Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8 Village, with Ethan Winters, and you can see that even with Grace Ashcroft, taking the lead in Resident Evil Requiem. Resident Evil 5 has Sheva Alomar, and I really don't think this was an easy thing to do because when you're playing as Chris, listen, you want to play if Chris is gonna have a partner, you're gonna say, well, it damn well better be Jill Valentine, maybe Rebecca Chambers, but those are the partners. Like, why are you introducing somebody new? And again, there's an important story purpose for it. But Sheva Alomar, in my opinion, holds her own. She is a fantastic partner, and she serves the story very, very well. It has a different dynamic and different personality from Jill Valentine, so definitely adds a great dynamic to Chris Redfield where he is at that time. And I honestly think it is a crime that we have not seen her since then in any other games because she was fantastic. She held her own. She is a badass. I'd like to see more of her, and it's just wild to me they haven't brought her back. But at least she's in Resident Evil 5, and she did a fantastic job in terms of the writers, what they did with that character. Fantastic job. Highly recommend checking out this game, especially if you like action games. Um, Again, as long as you have somebody to play with, I really think that you're gonna have a really amazing time with Resident Evil 5. Gold Edition, find a partner to play with. Um, if you've never played a Resident Evil game, is this a good one to start with? I'd argue it's not a bad spot, especially if you are really apprehensive and not a fan of horror games. Then Resident Evil 5 is a decent one to start off with, just because, again, it's not challenging in the sense of inventory management, yeah, managing your resources wisely in terms of healing items and ammo. You can just kind of go in there, get into some tense, stressful action moments, and have a lot of fun. And if you try and you're like, hey, I kind of like the zombie stuff, monster stuff. Maybe I want something more spooky. Then definitely check out the rest of the series. But if you like the action stuff, after Resident Evil 5, you can do Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 4 remake. You'll still enjoy Resident Evil Requiem, Resident Evil Village. So there's more Resident Evil games to check out if Resident Evil 5 is going to be your first one. And if you are a Resident Evil fan and for some reason you've never played this is a must play, 100%. I can say with certainty that you can skip Resident Evil 6. Um, Even like when I'm thinking about the other spin-off games like Umbrella Chronicles, Dark Side Chronicles, like you know what, you don't really need to play those ones. Resident Evil Revelations 1 and 2, I would say it's a good idea to play them, but they're not must plays. Resident Evil 5, without a doubt in my mind, is a must play if you're a fan. You'll definitely like the story, the lore, and the action pieces and the mechanics. You definitely need to check this out. So I just want to say thanks for hanging out with me as I gush about my favorite video game franchise of all time and Resident Evil 5. Listen, I know not everyone's playing this game in 2026, but if you haven't for some reason, perhaps you played Resident Evil Requiem and you're looking for more games to check out, Resident Evil 5 definitely should be on your list. You'll definitely have a lot of fun. All right, friends, until next time, happy gaming.
Do you have a gaming subscription service like Xbox Game Pass or a crazy backlog and don't know what to play next? Well, 1H1D might be for you. Join me, Chris, and my college buddy Tom as we play a random game or a requested game for an hour and decide if it's worth playing past that hour. We go over the good, the bad, and maybe some little tidbits about the development you might not have known. Got 30 minutes? Give us a try, and if you like it, throw us a 5-star review. Try something new. You never know what might be your next favorite game.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.